Hello, everyone. That was a little quick. Welcome to lecture number 4. So this week we're going to look at cascading style sheets, the first lecture. And up until now, we've been really looking at HTML, which is great for content. It sets out the content and the structure of a page, helps search engines understand your page, and it basically, if to use a building analogy, if you think about the HTML as the building being constructed from bricks and steel frames, CSS allows us to add style, color, and basically make a website look pretty. And I'll just quickly cut to the welcome page. So Takehome is a Norwegian person, famous for co-founding the Pirate Party in Norway, if anyone knows about that party. And he also was trying to recreate a raft, a Kon-Tiki raft, sailing from South America to, I think, Easter Island. Anyway, this video, very interesting video to look at. He even talks about how, excuse me for a second. He talks about how when he joined the World Wide Web project, he realized that a lot of people had started putting images on the net. So up until really he got involved, web pages were really just technical documents with headings, paragraphs, lists, and things. Really not much prettiness. But of course, commercially, people want to have pretty pages. And he describes it as basically being a glorified fax machine. So he realized there was a definite need for adding some sort of technology that allowed styling to web pages. So anyway, very good, interesting talk. I won't sort of preempt what he's saying, so I'll switch to slides only mode again. So the first part of today's talk, we're just going to look, as I said, the history, the origins, where, you know, when you're coding CSS, where you put it, some CSS concepts, so some of the basics, and then including CSS in a web document. So as I said, got a little bit ahead of myself here. You sort of have your structure. This is your HTML, and then CSS cascading style sheets adds style and colors. It's more about how that content is presented. So there's a list of things that people did in the 90s, and I'll be honest, even into the year 2000, maybe even today. These are things not to do. And so just bear in mind that, you know, sometimes people, say the extremely vision impaired, they don't really want to sit through non-breaking space, non-breaking space, non-breaking space, because you're too lazy to put in a style to make something sort of tab out a little bit. It's not a Word document. And also excessive line feeds, if you're saying BR, 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 just to create some padding or spacing, it's not good. You should really not be using markup to achieve styling and layout. So a list of things of what not to do. These techniques are bad. Do not do them in your assignment. So we've had a look at some tags, and to be honest, when it comes to Word documents, we are used to having the bold, you know, button and the italic button, and these tags are actually back in HTML5. They realize that bold and italic do have semantic meaning. I did speak about that in the HTML lecture. But one thing that hasn't come back is centered text. So centered text is possible through use of CSS, cascading style sheet code. But if you think about someone who's visually impaired, whether text is centered or not doesn't really have any semantic meaning, and so it's not really covered in any markup tags or attributes. So if you see a tag saying center in triangle brackets, or a line equals center, perhaps an attribute of an element, that is definitely old, deprecated code and should be removed as much as possible. Strong and EM, these were introduced in XHTML. I suppose I've spoken about this. These do have semantic meaning. So if you're listening to a screen reader, it does make sense that strong, text is strong or text is emphasized. And as I said, bold and italic are back. For a while, they were discontinued. Now, from a programming and maintenance perspective, this is true of all programming languages, and it has been known for a long time that as soon as you start mixing structure or the model with presentation or a view, you start to make your code very spaghetti-like, and it can be very, very hard to adapt your code to more applications. So if anyone's done any sort of Java programming or object-oriented programming, one of the mantras is to try and keep your objects as simple as possible and not to have that sort of view controller code mixed in with your model code. If you haven't had that, you are in for a treat. It's definitely on the cards. So CSS is basically what controls presentation. So all of these things: positioning, white space, font family, the weight and size, and basically, if it's meant to look pretty, it will generally be in CSS. So another advantage is if you have a single style sheet, and we'll look at that in a moment, or a small number of style sheets, it means you can apply it to every page in a website and create a uniform look and feel. And if you need to change the way all pages look, you can just change the styles in your single or limited number of style sheets, and that will affect every page in a website. Another thing developers today have to face is people are watching, viewing content in mobile devices. So we do have to sort of adapt to that. One way of doing this is using media queries or maybe custom style sheets, but there are tricks to using inline blocks, which we'll look at soon, to let content adapt. So it's always generally a good idea to do things like this, just to see whether your page content does adapt, say, a smaller screen like this or a larger screen. So I'll just turn this on. So how my navigation adapts, it just basically collapses into a grid. I've chosen 12 buttons deliberately because 12 is a really nice number. That didn't do too well. But it's always a good idea to keep these things in mind. So the take-home message for this slide, if you see anything like this, color equals red, just think about someone who's listening to this page on a screen reader. Color equals red. Does that really mean anything semantically? That should be moved into a style sheet and not be present in HTML. Now, another thing, there are styles that are being developed by browsers. So just because it's in the specifications doesn't mean every browser supports it. And there's a really good website called Can I Use? So caniuse.com. If we type in Flow, we can see that Flow has actually got very good support these days. So if we just scroll through here. Oh, sorry. Let me just type in Flex. Sorry, I don't know. Did I see Flow there? No, I don't know where I got Flow from. So we can see that basically browsers are very, this property is now very well supported. But in the past, you can see there was partial support with a WebKit prefix, such as WebKit on the case of Firefox, Mozilla, Moz Dash. So what was happening is these browser, the people that build these browsers were implementing this feature, and it doesn't have official support, but they had like a sort of testing support whilst they were developing it. So if we look at Internet Explorer 11, we can see it's got partial support, and so partial support is due to a large amount of bugs. Same with 10. So they had the prefix MS, and 6 to 9. Oop, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about this. Try to catch the mute button there. So this is a very handy website. So it just lets you know whether, if the style's not working in the browser, just check to see whether you need to put in a vendor prefix to make it work. What's frustrating is, of course, it means you have to put in multiple styles sometimes, but as time progresses, a lot more styles are becoming better supported by all browsers. Now, I've just noticed I've missed a closing curly brace, so I'll try and fix that up, hopefully in time before you are watching the slides alongside this. Okay, so style sheet origins, we can actually put style in different style sheets. So, sorry, wrong concept. There are 3 levels of style sheets. So the first level is the user agent. So this is what a browser will provide as a default, and usually black and white text, bolder headings. Usually the default headings, such as I think H4 and H5, are actually slightly smaller than the main text, which is not a good thing. But there's some kind of basic style, and you've probably seen default blue and purple hyperlinks. So there's some amount of style, but these styles are very easily overwritten. Now the next layer, and this is the layer that is relevant to us because we are developers. So when we're writing style sheets, these styles do overwrite any user agent style sheets. So if they've specified that the text is black as part of the default style, then our styles will overwrite that quite simply. And then the final step, and I'll have a look at this shortly, you as a user are able to install your own style sheets and basically overwrite any styles that, say, a sloppy developer may have. So let's just say, I don't know, you're not happy with Canvas. In fact, we will be looking at Canvas later on today. And you can basically, as a user, you can write styles that will generally overwrite those styles. So just to summarize, and do click these tried editors. I'll just pop that over there. So what I've got here is I'm styling everything. So the star basically selects everything. And what this is doing is just overwriting any styles that the vendor has popped in. And I'll just turn these off just to show you that when all of these styles are turned off, what you get is the default styles. And look at the purple hyperlink there. So these are, if you like, the author styles, and these styles currently are the vendor provided. I'll just turn them all back on. And I've got a couple of other things I'd like you to sort of try. Or have I? No, I can't see. I usually have some instructions in there. when I do this. Now, if you click here, you can see a screenshot of what I've just shown. So if you right click and inspect the element, or I think if you hit F12, maybe F11, you'll get this window pop open. And now sometimes this will be up here. If you like it up there, that's fine. But if you want it underneath, I generally like it underneath. You can see your HTML here. So you can go through and sort of do some editing, and you can see all the styles that are in action. So the list style type is a decimal. So that's the user agent style sheet. So this is Chrome's style sheet, and I've basically overwritten that by putting these in. If I turn all these off, we start to get that default style coming back in. So I'll close that for the moment. So this is a screenshot of my brother's computer. My brother's visually impaired, and he's got a very high style, a high contrast style sheet enabled. So when he's viewing browsers, he gets these very high contrast style sheet. So this is Google essentially. So you may think, oh well, if visually impaired people can install their own style sheets, I don't have to worry about them. Not everyone is as technically savvy as my brother, so it's very important not to assume that visually impaired people will have the ability to put in their own style sheets, and also it's the law not to have some basic kind of styling for visually impaired. It also makes good business sense to have a website that's not awful to look at as well. So a CSS property looks pretty much like this. You state the property, and then you state what the value is. And we'll see this a lot. It's like you've got a sort of key, or a name or something, and then you've got the value of what that property is. So I've got a couple of examples here, and hopefully you can see that most examples are pretty self-explanatory. So color is green, so that's text. That's a little bit obscure, but background color is cyan. So I'm not going to lie, this is probably not very good. Font size, text align. So if you want center text, you can have it. Some styles, you can actually write a few styles and compact them in one. So this is border weight, border color, and border style, compacted into one single declaration. And we've got padding here. So we'll see this in the next lecture. But this basically puts in 2 pixels of padding sort of up here and down here, and 10 pixels along the sides, left and right. This isn't the one I'm using for this slide, but it just gives you an idea of what's possible. So these are the property and values, and you can have multiple multiple CSS properties. But of course, we need to know what we're styling. So what we do is we say what we want to style. So in this case, in this example, I'm styling a paragraph, and the color is green, the background color is khaki. Again, maybe not the best color scheme. And I've got a couple of other issues. The width is 80%, so it's not going all the way to the side. But if you make the window slightly bigger, you can see it's always 80%. And I've got dotted border and some padding here as well. Just so you know, if you are sort of designing something, you can put in some sort of rough colors, and then you can come to the inspector and just, maybe that green's not quite the right green. Maybe it just needs to be darkened up a bit, so you can have a bit of a play. and you can copy the color. So this color is currently this number, and you can put that in your code. So you can just replace that green with this number instead, with a hash in front. Press enter. This is only temporary, and then let's just say you think this is a bit too yellow and you want to lighten it up a little bit. You can just play around, and again, just copy that value, and you've got it. And if you find that this is not working for you, you can't remember what your initial settings were, you can just hit refresh, and it all comes back. Another thing, many styles, if you style, say, an element, and then you have some child elements inside that element. So for example, you might have some emphasis tags and maybe some bold tags or strong tags. If you style the color to be green, generally color is inherited by the child elements. So these child elements are also green. You don't have to say that they're green. And but not all elements do this. So I've just got an example here. If you were expecting a property to be inherited from its parent and it wasn't, you can force it to say color inherit. There is an alternative style. I think the style is initial. This is another good thing. You can oops. You can basically type and it will give you a hand. Oh, what? So if you don't want it to inherit its parent style, you can say initial, and it will inherit, the default black color that it was outside of this element. Another thing we can do, so let's just say all the headings, I'd like my heading 1s to be a certain font family, and heading 2 to be a certain font family, and heading 3 to be a certain font family. Can get a bit repetitive, so we can group elements of a common, a common thing, and assign that. So I want all my headings to be sans serif. And if I then want to change the font family, I only have to change it in one place. So sans serif is not really a good font. I strongly recommend choosing a nicer font. So if you inspect my headings, you can see that. There's lots of styles there. If you need to put in a filter, just type in font, and then any font related styles will come up. So I'm using Museo 500, which you may recognize as being in many of RMIT's documents. Another way of styling elements, I will be showing some better ones, but these are very good, certainly programmatically, but I'll get onto that soon. So hopefully your student ID is popping up here. So if there's an element with your student ID, so there can only be one element with an ID. If the color is red, that will basically color that element red. And I've got an example here, P ID equals, your paragraph will have red text. And here's an example here. Now I have cheated. If you look at the code, you will see I've cheated because I didn't want to have a paragraph with your ID, just in case I wanted to use it elsewhere. So, but I hope you can sort of see the effect. It's like, this is what it would look like. If you want to style a class, so more than one element can have the class strike in this case. So I want to have text decoration line through. So I basically want to have a line through the paragraph text. So if I have paragraph strike equals text, this paragraph will be struck out. And I haven't cheated with this example. This is P class equals strike. and it will be struck out. So I can have multiple paragraphs with this class, but I can only have one paragraph with this ID. And I can combine them, so as long as these styles don't conflict, so one's tackling the color, one's tackling the text decoration, the cascading nature of style sheets means that both styles will be applied to this element. And we'll have a look at what happens when there's a conflict shortly. Now, one thing I'm annoyed with CSS, and I'm still waiting for this to be fixed, there's only one type of comment tag, so there is no // for single line comment, or that's an alternative one that pops up here and there. We have to use the opening and closing markers, even if it's only on one line, which is a little bit frustrating, but that's what we have to do. Now, how we can include CSS inside a web document, and I did jump a little bit ahead about 2 minutes ago when I was talking about this. We can put inline style inside an element, which is almost like styling an element by its ID. So it's really, in a final version of a website, it's not a good idea, but it is good for small debugging. If you're just debugging your code and you're just trying to get the style right, then obviously inline's a pretty efficient way of just tweaking a single element. In fact, if we just have a look at this, so let's just say I've selected this LI element. So we've got user agent style sheets. This is what Google has provided. So I might say, I'll just say color is red. So what this is actually doing, this is actually putting an inline style. So it says style equals. So it's an attribute of this LI element, color red, and it's closing that quote. You have to use quotes because there are spaces, and but if you didn't have spaces, you may be able to get away with it if it's just a single line. I'm not 100% sure. I strongly recommend, if you are using style attributes, that you do put the content in quotes. And if you want to turn that off, that will just comment it out temporarily, and then you can reselect it. If you hit refresh, then this style goes away, because this is just the user agent. Sorry, not the user agent. The user putting their own styles on top of any styles that I, the developer, have provided. So here's an example of inline style. I have shown you an example, but you can have more than one style. So I'm setting here the font weight, and the color. So this is good, for debugging, as I said, but let's just say you need to change this. You'd then have to open up the HTML and fix this element. And it's probably not good from a maintenance point of view to use inline style. The next worst way of putting code in a style in a web page is to have an embedded style sheet. So generally, this is put inside the head tag, not to be confused with the header tag, as discussed in week 1. So you have the style tag, and then you put some styles in there. You can have as many styles as you like. I just have 2 simple ones. And you can put in comments as well. So these styles will only affect this single page, which may be helpful, but it just means that you have to go into that HTML document if you want to change the look of the page. So again, you're sort of mixing the content, the model, with the way that it's meant to be presented, or the view. So the best way, or the way I'm trying to lead you into, is using external style sheets. So what happens is you create a file called mystyle.css. If it's not in the same directory, you can, and I'll just show you. If you want to go up to the parent directory, maybe it's up there, or perhaps it's in a folder called style. Basically, you're telling the browser where to find this document, and so if the style's not being rendered, it's generally a sign that the URL, if you like, is incorrect. So yep, so you supply the href, where to find it, and then the style sheet will come in to your page. Now, I was explaining last week, I'll just show you the announcements again, that when you're developing, sometimes the latest version of the style sheet doesn't come down, and it was a bit of a problem. So I have got some hacky code. You can still have the location of where your style sheet is, but what you're doing is you're getting PHP to include this before it even leaves the server. So the code is basically written inside your web page, and then it's posted to the customer over the internet. So I found this is a good way of developing, and then once you're happy with your final product, then you can switch over to the standard way, which is to use this method. This is a little bit expensive because it's delivering the style sheet every time, whereas this way it does allow the style sheet to be cached in the server's short-term memory, or in its cache, and it just makes the server more efficient when you do it this way. Now, what I do, just so you're aware, I've got 5 style sheets, and I do this because I'm easily confused. So generally what I try and do is I try and put any styles that affect color and border in this style sheet, and it means I can group elements that aren't logically related, but they all have the same sort of colors. So I put those styles in there, and then I have a layout CSS, so anything that sort of affects layout I'll put in there. Again, there'll be elements that are not normally related, but the layout may be very similar, so I'll put them in there. And then I'll have widgets throughout the page, and so I tend to put the color and layout for those in one place because I want to be able to control the widgets directly. I've got a style sheet just for printing styles, so if when I'm editing this file I don't want anything messing up, and if I do make a mistake in color border, that means the color goes wrong but the layout's fine. If I make a mistake in layout, the layout's broken but the color's fine. So it also helps me know whereabouts the mistake that I've made is. And just to be even more crazy, these are really safety railings for someone with a short-term memory loss problems. I'll be putting testing CSS in this style sheet, and when I'm happy that these styles are working, then I'll move them to my main style sheets, just so I don't mess up my work in these style sheets and forget a missing bracket or something and break everything. So one thing with external style sheets, and this can happen, embedded style sheets have style tags, but this is HTML. Don't put those tags in a CSS file. And I'll just open up my widgets file so you can have a quick look. So again, I've got like a little comment thing here. So there's no opening style tag and no closing style tag. This is pure CSS inside here. Okay, so advanced selectors and colors. Now what I want to show you, just it's kind of like a little sort of demo of the user agent style sheet. Last week I noticed in the discussions that this is the topic of this is being clipped. And if I inspect this element, I can see in the source code, students' handy tips and resources, it's there, but no amount of dragging this open allows it to grow full size. And another little frustrating thing is there seems to be a lot of white space here, or dead space. White space isn't always white. That's basically crushing this. So it took me a little while to debug this. So I have got prepared styles ready to drop in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of show you how I apply styles, and I've got this plugin called Edit User JavaScript and CSS. So it's a little Chrome plugin. It's probably available in Firefox, and there's some other plugins that do the same job. I think like Code Monkey or Grease Monkey, I think, does the same job. I just happened to choose this one because it allows me to put in not only CSS, but also allows me to apply JavaScript to a page. So Canvas has got some dynamic styles, and I don't sort of want to scare you too much by jumping ahead, but I've got some things are fixed as soon as the window scroll event is detected. So it loads badly, but then as soon as I scroll it gets fixed. I've had a lot of fun sort of modifying Canvas so that it's more efficient. So one thing you may have noticed is when you scroll, this is sticky, so it doesn't scroll off screen. The buttons are smallest because we're just taking up too much room. And I can't show you at the moment, but in discussions, I basically fixed the layout in discussions. So if you do want a copy of this, I will show you afterwards. But it's basically in one of my Git repositories. So the first step, what I want to do, and I'm going to pick on this one because this is the one that's annoying me the most. So I'm looking for an element, and as you can see, there's quite a few elements. There's lots of unnecessary double bagging, and something that I'm quite upset by, I'm very disappointed with the developers. They've put divs, a block element, inside a span, and the whole point of div and span was that really divs can go inside divs, spans can go inside spans. Spans can go inside divs because inline elements go inside block elements, but it's really not, the whole point of having two empty elements devoid of any semantic meanings was to, so you wouldn't put a div inside a span. But they're definitely breaking that model. So, you might as well have an element called spiv, which doubles as a block or a span element. Anyway, that's just my little frustration. Now, another frustration I've got is there are two spans here, and there's nothing in here that I'm confident will be static across all Canvas pages. This looks like, just, I don't know, auto-generated passwords. I don't even get it. So I don't really have much confidence if I choose one of these styles that it'll be selected. So I'm going back to, and also there doesn't seem to be, let me see, I think is it this one I'm looking for? I don't know. So this is definitely a container. So what I want to do is I just want to put in, I'm going to make this green. Green solid dotted, sorry, that's two border style things. So green, I'll say 2 pixels, so it's easy to see. So that's definitely highlighting that one, and I'll make this one red. So red, 2 pixels, dotted, and I'll pick this one, which is causing an issue. I just want to see how big it is. Border. I haven't used blue yet, and it's not dotted. Sorry, it's dotted now. What was the other thing? 2 pixels. And I can see I made just a small mistake there. Okay, let me just... Okay, there we go. So I'm beginning to sort of see what's going on. So what I have done is I have sort of extracted... oh, sorry, I'm jumping in. I shouldn't be showing you that. So what I want to do is these... Basically, I want to choose this span. So this span, if you like, is the container, is the parent. And I've got 2 children inside that. But the only span I've got confidence in targeting is, if you like, the container's grandparent. So this container is the grandparent of this one and great-grandparent of these. So what I want to do, and I hope, oh, of course I've deleted the styles. So first of all, let me move my comments so I remember what I'm doing. So I want to target these. Now I've got some extra styles, so I'm just going to delete them, because what I'm doing is I'm just trying to recreate the steps I took to style them. So here are some styles I prepared earlier. Let me just remove all the evidence that I did a lot of preparation. So I've just popped them in. I'm pressing save. And now I'm going to hit refresh. Now all the elements should be affected. And I'm just showing you that I discovered that there are some more. So there are some more children. Or more to the point, there are some more, you know, those parents. Well, there's aunties and uncles. So so there's another sort of batch down here. So there's nothing in them. So I'm not going to worry about them too much. Maybe Canvas has got them there for a reason. I'm not going to try and interfere too much. So so let me go back to here. Now I have jumped ahead. If I delete this, I'll just show you the aunties and uncles thing that I was talking about. I thought I'd actually deleted that style. So you can see that just as this is a green box with a red and a blue in it, there's another sort of hidden empty version of it underneath. So I was hoping to demonstrate that to you with its own children. So these are like cousins, basically. And these are aunties and uncle elements. And of course, the only named element is the great-grandparent. So what I did was, let me just jump back. So this, that's the one that I'm looking for. Or is it? I see discussion content container. I'm just losing my... I hope Canvas hasn't done some redevelopment whilst I was messing around with this. I'm looking for IC discussion content container. Okay, so what's this element? Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm sorry, just a little bit lost here. Okay, so you can sort of see that, you know, they've got these little draggable things. So okay, you know, maybe all this double wrapping is there for a reason. But yeah, these ones, I have no idea what these are for. And when you click on them, they're not even visible. That one is, there's a little thing there. You know, maybe that has a purpose. I don't know. Oh my goodness, have I lost it? Yeah, was this the one I was looking at? I see discussion content container. Oh, here we go. I was way lost. Okay, so actually, here's a handy tip. If you ever got lost in the tree, which is very easy to do, yeah, I was I was looking at the great grandparent nodes there. Okay, so yeah, this one is named. So this is why. Let me pop this over here. So this is why I've targeted this one, and what I'm looking for initially is the grandchild. So it's these are direct descendant selectors. We will be looking at that very shortly. So I want to find the grandparent and give that the green dotted style. So I've actually found one more than I was hoping for, but I can live with that. And then underneath, I'm targeting the grandchildren. Sorry, the great grandchildren. Now, there are two of them. So the first one, and I'm using a pseudo selector here. We'll be looking at that shortly. So I want the first child, the first span, and I also want the last span. And just coloring that red and coloring that blue so I know that I'm definitely attacking the elements that I want. Now, I've had a look through and I realized that the reason why these elements are doing what they're doing. So this needs more space than this one. You know, this is, if you like, the older sibling and needs more resources than this smaller baby sibling. So I've had a look around and I realized that the problem is caused by flex. And what I want to do is turn off the flex style, which is an advanced styling style. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in a flex unset into both of these. And oh, where's that one space there? So I'm going to unset that, save, and come back and refresh. And you can see that the cousins are really crunched up now because there's nothing inside them. So this is not looking too good. You know, it's looking a bit dodgy, but I promise you this is looking a lot better than it was. So the next thing I want to do is I want to kick out the red. I'm going to temporarily give it 100% width. So this is the red one. What are these complaining about? So yeah, I'm getting some little warnings saying, oh, you know, what's going on? But I know what I'm doing. Don't worry. So if I hit refresh, we should see. And I'm going to make this bigger. Okay, it's not doing what I was hoping it was doing. Hopefully you can see this has been crunched up. I don't know what I'm doing differently, but this was actually becoming 100% of the width and kicking this blue square over here. But it's not doing that. Maybe I've tidied up my code accidentally. And yeah, I'm not quite sure how I fixed some code without meaning to fix it, which is a bit annoying. I'm gonna see if this unfixes what I was doing. So I'm just saying the width of the blue box, I want that to be the initial width. Maybe that will fix things. No, it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a CSS style, and this is a very handy style. I want the width of the red box to be 100%, but 100% minus the width. And I think we'll be looking at this next week. I'm not sure if I'll be covering it this week because next week is more layout styles. So if I do this 100% minus 0 pixels, well, that makes no difference at all. So I'll just show you it makes no difference at all. No difference at all. But I'm going to inspect this one. And the style should have come through. One nice thing about the inspector is I'm going to hit the up and down arrows. So I'm just going to start reducing the size. And you can, if you look, you can see this empty one. It's coming lower. This one is just underneath the blue one at the moment. So I'm just going to reduce, increase, sorry, the negative size. And you can see the blue box is increasing, which is good. Now, if I go too far, then, I've got this problem that it's going too fast. So when I sort of get to about 80, so, 83, I'm going to pick a nice number, 85. I just picked 85 arbitrarily. So I'm going to allow 85 pixels for this. It seems to be enough space for this little brother or little sister. Big brother can have as much space as they like. Now, if I resize it, I can see this is a much better sort of system. And if I go really small, yep, I can see that in mobile view, it's functional. It's working. So I'm quite happy with these styles. So let me just check I've got all the styles in here. Yep, that's good. So I'm going to turn off the borders. So I don't need this one at all. I can delete that. I'm going to delete that border. And I'm going to delete that border. Hit save. So what I'm doing now is taking down all the scaffolding, and a beautiful building, cathedral, is about to be revealed. Fingers crossed. So, damn it. What did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot to update that. What did I say? 85 pixels? That was embarrassing. Great, that's great. Now when I do the resizing, these get really close, and then I get that ellipses effect. The ellipses effect is actually a style. It's a CSS3. One of those elements, I don't know if it's the grandfather, the great-grandfather, or the father of the father. One of those elements has got a text overflow style on it, and it's using ellipses. There might be a try it here, so we can see this in action just here. If you're not happy with that, you can say clip or something. Yeah, maybe not today. I'm trying to make these TLDR lectures slightly shorter than 2 hours, so I won't spend too much time on that. So I'm quite happy with this. So what I would now do is go to my GitHub, Canvas shim. So this is a public repository. I'm logged in, but you should be able to see it. And oh, no, not the CSS. Sorry, not the JavaScript, the CSS. So here's, I did paste this earlier, but I've got a feeling, yeah, I left this in, and really I should have deleted it. So normally what I would do, you don't have to push and pull with Git. If you're ever frustrated because you can't push or pull, I recommend finding the file that you know has got the correct code, and then just basically doing this. Oh yeah, that's right. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting all the code, I'm copying, and oh man, what window am I in? I hit the edit button. I can select all of this code and I can delete it, and then I can paste. And then I can commit. So what am I saying? Update of discussion. So just so I know what I was doing. And I'm committing directly to the master. I'm committing change. So if you want a copy of that to put in your version of, use a JavaScript and CSS plugin, you can just basically copy this code and pull it down. You don't have to use pull and push to get code out of a repository, especially a public one. So just if you're currently scared about Git, honestly, it's there to help you, not the other way around. So so I'll pop that over there, or I'll pop it back in here now. So it's out of the way. So that's the discussions now fixed up quite neatly. So what's next? So back to the lectures. And now I'm going to look at some of these advanced styles. Not just the basics. So we're going to look at contextual selectors and pseudo selectors, some of what I was just showing you just 5 minutes ago. So contextual selectors. So what I've got here is I've got a navigation element, and I've got a space here this time, not an arrow or a greater than sign. And so what this does, this selects any element, any navigation element that's found inside a nav. So that could be a child, a grandchild, a great-grandchild, a great-great-grandchild. There's no discrimination. So I'm styling those red, and I might decide I want all the hyperlinks in my main to be green, a green color. So I say main, A, and then every hyperlink, no matter where it is in my main, it will be colored green. And this can, continue. So I can say main li em. So only ems that are inside list elements inside a main will be colored purple. And just to give you a little idea, these code blocks, basically they're blue, red, and green. I think I might have a fourth style. It might be orange. I try not to go too deep, because otherwise it starts looking like a rainbow website, which I encourage you not to do. So what I do is anything that's code, I color blue. So basically all of this is in the code tag. And then if something's in a span, and this code is inside a span, I want it to be colored red. And if there's a span inside a span, like this, or this, or this, I want that code to be colored green. And if you have a look at the source code, you can see, fingers crossed, I've got my code tag, and then I've got a span, and then inside that span, there's another span. So I'm not using class or ID or anything. I'm using contextual selectors to get this coloring. And that means I don't have to maintain class equals. It just looks after itself. So that's why I strongly recommend understanding contextual selectors, so you don't have to use class and ID all the time. So here's the direct descendant selectors. So this is what I was using in my Canvas debugging code. So I want an emphasis tag that's a direct descendant of a paragraph, and I'm going to color that text red. So it will style this element that's inside a paragraph, but it won't style this one because there's an EM element inside a strong. It's not a direct descendant. So sometimes sometimes you'll want just the plain descendant tag. Sometimes you want a direct descendant selector. Now this one's a bit subtle. This is like a sibling selector. So if there's a paragraph that has a brother or sister sibling element that's a pre-tag, it will be colored this color. So these are inside a section, I believe, and so because it's got an older brother or sister that's a pre-element, it will be colored red. Or sorry, it'll be colored saddle brown. This one's pretty obscure. I'll just give you a heads up on that one. I don't really use this very often, but this one is probably a little bit more useful. Very similar to the sibling, but it's like followed by. So this is like if a paragraph follows a paragraph, then I want it to be purple. So this is a paragraph that's not styled because it follows a pre-element, but this paragraph follows a paragraph. So it's going to get colored purple. Now this one also follows a paragraph. So you should say, oh, this one should be purple, but the cascading nature has come in. And so because this is more specific, there's, a paragraph followed by a paragraph followed by a paragraph. I want this to be colored red. So this one follows two paragraphs. So even though it could be purple, it's the other style has overridden it, and it's now colored red. And the same is true for this paragraph. If I had 4 P's in a row with pluses and colored this orange, this text would be orange. So this is quite a handy style. I occasionally use this one. So now we're moving to pseudo selectors, and pseudo selectors generally pick things that are based on their state. So there's an element, and we're not giving it an ID. We're not looking at whether it's got a sibling or something. We are looking at what its state is, and so so the state at the moment is separated from the selector by a semicolon character. And let me just make this text a little bit bigger just so you can see what's going on. Oh, make it all bigger. So let's just make that the right size. So monospace font. Just trying to choose a nice font here. So I was looking for the first child, so I'm looking for a span that happens to be the first child, and I'm looking for a span that happens to be the last child. In that example I showed you before. But the most common application is to basically style hyperlinks. So if a link has been unvisited, hasn't been visited, it can be styled a certain way. So the default way is blue, and this is the default color for a visited link. So when it comes to navigation, it's a good idea to have them the same color. So it's quite sensible to sort of group them together. And so there's a rule called the love-hate rule, which we'll look at. So this is the LV or LOVE side of the love-hate rule. And I'm coloring the text dark red. And here, what I'm doing here is I'm looking for when there's a mouse hovering over a hyperlink. So this doesn't work so well for touch screens. And also, if I click on a link, it's active for a very short time. So I want that to be active. And we will see this in a moment. There's also a pseudo state called selected, I think. So if it's being selected, it you can also style the style, which I think might work for touch screens a little bit better. So what I've got here, I've got a dark red and a lighter red, and if you look at these main hyperlinks, you'll see that they're lighter green when you're hovering over them and when you click on them, but normally they're this sort of darker green. So I really should update the colors because they were initially red, but I didn't want them fighting with this red. Mind you, they'll be fighting with this green now. I think I changed the color scheme because I wanted the HTML slides to be that kind of reddy orange. So I think that's why I chose green. So it was sufficiently different from the main sort of slide colors, the topic slide colors. And yeah, here are the first, the first child, last child, which I showed you before. But you can pick the nth child. So if you're looking at for the 7th child in that array, so maybe that might have been a better pick for me earlier. You can do it this way. And if you want to have stripy elements, so tables or lists, you can select even numbered items. So you say 2n, and n is assumed to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'll get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And the nth child, 2n plus 1, and I think 2n minus 1 works as well. You'll get 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. And if you want tricolor, just say 3n, 3n plus 1, 3n plus 2. And it should look lovely. So I've got a try it thing here. So have a play here, and I think I've got some suggestions. Yeah, I've definitely got some suggestions for you to sort of make these lists stripy. Now, so those are pseudo classes. Have I got that right? Pseudo class selectors. So now what we're doing is we're looking at pseudo elements. And this is a fairly subtle distinction. But one of the problems with CSS3, they decided when you are creating a pseudo element, you should use 2 semicolons. In CSS2, we only needed 1. And why they decided to make things more difficult for developers, I don't know. This is something really a computer could probably work out for itself. So what we need is selector double colon. But if you're going to have trouble getting your head around this, don't worry too much because browsers basically allow you just to use 1. So so we've got the this new element that we're going to create, and we're going to assign a property to that value. Now, when I say we're going to create it, we're going to let the browser create it. We don't actually code it ourselves. So hopefully these examples will explain it. So if I want to create a first line pseudo element, I don't actually have to type any code. I just have to say p first line, and the browser will look at this paragraph and work out what content's in the first line and apply the style to that first line. And if you make this window smaller, you can see that content is sliding out and is becoming normal because it's going on to the next line. And then when it's coming back up, it's being styled in a pseudo element that is just created on the fly for you to, well, for the user to see. So that's a nice easy one. And you can also have just the first letter styled slightly differently. So I'm just making this a slightly bigger font. When you're selecting text, so I've got a kind of like an orange selection. I'm not sure if that's my computer settings. So usually there's a default, again, there's a default user agent style. But if you try selecting this text, it disappears. And the reason why that is because I'm applying a color, and we'll be looking at colors soon. 0 red, 0 green, 0 indigo blue, and 0 alpha. So it's completely transparent. If that was 1, it would be black. So you wouldn't see any difference. But this is basically an invisible color. We can put things in front and after. So if you want to have like fancy quotes, so I've got some quote marks here. So notice that it's not, the quotes aren't actually in the text. They're being added before and after. And if you want to make these prettier, you can use curly quotes. But I've just got some plain boring ones at the moment. And this is an important thing to note. Some characters have meanings, so the quote character has meanings. So if you want to pick the literal quote, we can escape it using this / character. And also, if you know the Unicode number for a character, you can say /. So this is the love heart character. Just Google love code Unicode or heart Unicode, and it will tell you what number it is. And so you can add it to the end. So I've got after, and I've made it a little bit bigger just so it's visible. And if you've got an image you want to add, you can pick that URL. So notice it's this image up here, and you say content URL and just provide the location of that content. I can imagine an image. I can't imagine any other sort of content. I mean, I wouldn't include a web page there, I guess. That would be fun to try. I won't try it. Okay, so now moving on to slightly more advanced selectors. So if you've got something, but you only want to style it if it has a certain attribute or a certain attribute and value, then this is how you do it. You just pop in some square brackets, and there are your codes. So let's just say in a form, you say input required. You can pop in some styles there to put in. Now, if you want to make text fields a certain color, you can say it's got to have a type attribute, and it's also got to have the value text. So you don't want type equals checkbox or some other types of input. So you can then just basically style those. If you've got a hyperlink and you only want to target hyperlinks that open up in a new page, you can use this selector. This one is selecting any href attribute that begins with, and that's what the hat is for, the letters HTTP. So this will pick HTTP or HTTPS. And generally they're external hyperlinks, because you wouldn't waste time going out onto the internet to come back to your page. That would just be wasteful. It'd be like making an external call to call someone that you can call internally on a landline. This should be yours. So if you've got squiggle S1234567 or your student ID, you can style just the styles that are in your website, as long as they contain, that text. You can do that. And just for giggles, if you've got an image and it happens to be a duck, you say the alt tag is equal to duck, you can style that, I don't know, with some feathers or maybe some quacking or something. maybe I should put kitten just to continue this super fluffy kittens idea. HTML5 gave us some more selectors, which was very nice. So before in XHTML, this was not a thing. So if an input is invalid or a select box is invalid, you can style it red or something like that. The search box, let me just activate that. If you just type in one letter, that's not valid. But 0 letters is allowed and 2 letters is allowed. So that just gives you a bit of a demonstration on what's possible. Now I'm not sure this works. Radio buttons and checkboxes, I haven't had much luck styling them. Generally, the way that I do it, again, I'll just open up this. This is a jQuery plugin. What it does is it actually makes these are actually checkboxes. So when you select them, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I can't believe I've done that. So these are actually checkboxes, and how they do this is they actually hide the checkbox and put in a label and style the label so that if it's next to a checkbox, it has a different style than if it's an unchecked box. So yeah, that's how radical you need to get if you're trying to style checkboxes and radio buttons. So now I've got to scroll through and find that slide I was on. So way past here, wasn't I? So there's the duck. So that was that one. So I'm just letting you know that doesn't work. And I'm too scared to close this now. I'll just minimize that for the moment. And also, if you've got a number or a date and it's out of range because you popped in min and max tags, min and max elements. Say that again. Min and max attributes. You can then style that so that it's obvious that it's out of range. And also these styles, you've got, if there's an invalid, there's generally a valid. If there's an in range, there's an out of range selector. Quite a few to choose from. Okay, so now moving to the cascading nature of style sheets. So up until now, we've seen different styles that apply different non-conflicting styles to an element. So we want to see what happens when you've got two rules that are trying to style the same thing. And I've got 4 examples here of where I'm coloring the text a different color. So star means style everything, and we saw this in the first try it example. So I want all text in my website to be red. I don't care what it is. I want it to be red. Make a note that that's probably the most imprecise selector. It styles everything. So it's a very imprecise rule. Then the next style I've got is style all paragraphs orange. So I don't want any headings or list items or anything like that styled with different color text. I just want paragraph text to be orange. Next, I want anything with the class approved. So that might be a heading, a paragraph, a list item. I just want anything that's approved to be green. So that's my next thing. And then I've got an ID. So there's only one element that's allowed to have this ID. And I want that to be blue. So only one element on the entire website is allowed. Well, sorry, on the entire web page is allowed to be blue. So the question is, what color is the text in this code example going to be? And I'll let you think about that. Pause the video, unpause the video, and hopefully you will see that the answers are on the next slide. I just fooled myself there. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So what I do is I do explain this. So this is a very general selector. It's very imprecise. This is somewhat precise. So it's kind of like how do I say it? Let's say bronze medal. So this is like participation award level. This is like bronze star level. Class. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a page. The specificity calculator. I just want to make sure I have got this right. I hate getting this wrong. Oops. So I'm just opening this up off screen. Yep, I'm totally correct. So this is like a silver star level, and then this is like a gold star level. So it's very specific. Only one element's allowed to have an ID. So if you click on this link, well, actually, let's click on this link first. So if you're building a browser, this is what you have to do. You have to come and read this. You know, maybe a little dry, but if you're just a developer, the other link is much more friendly. And how it works is basically, you know, you got your participation award, which didn't even make it. So you got your elements, so something like paragraph or a pseudo element. That's interesting. Oh, that's really interesting. A pseudo element's got the same level as an element. So yeah, that's good to know. So you know, you can collect stars, and as long as the number of gold, you know, ID selectors, and silver, that's classes, attributes, and pseudo classes, are the same, then what it'll do is it will basically go to the next level. So there's two examples here. So I've got a nav, a hover, and there's a pseudo element selector here, but this is pseudo class selector here. So what I want to do is I want to just boost this one. So this one is going to get trounced by this one because this one has got one ID selector. So if I pop in a ID selector, so I'm just going to say Steve. These two numbers are now the same. So the browser will go, oh, these two numbers are the same. Okay, well, I'll go to the next level. I'll check how many silver medals they've got. They've got one silver medal each. Okay, well, I'll go and check the bronze medal count. And it sees that this one's got 3 and this one's only got 2. So now this one will take precedence. And if you have a look at, sometimes your code editor gives you little tips. So such and such is overqualified. Just use .gradebook. But this is what I'm doing. I'm actually wrestling with Canvas, and gradebook wasn't enough, so I had to say body.gradebook to capture this style, or to make my style override Canvas's style. Likewise, if you want this one to have a higher priority, you know, you can sort of cheat. Let's say li.active, and you know, it's also active. So this is the pseudo state, a pseudo class. So now this one's got 2 of these. So now this one is in the lead. This one will take priority. So it can be quite frustrating. You know, sometimes you're so sure a style should have precedence, but this calculator just helps you out to work out what's going wrong. And also, if you are inspecting any elements, Let me just show you this one. Oh, man, not that one. Anything that's crossed out, this means that there's a style that is being superseded. And I think if you put your mouse over it, oh, that's an invalid property. Oh, I'll have to check that out. That looks like a typo in my style sheet. Is this one? Oh dear, this is not good. Okay, so I've got some errors in my color border. I'm just making a note of these errors here. So color border. So 252 and 175. I'll check those out later. I must have bumped those styles at some point. This one's what I'm looking for. So there's a style here. I was hoping that was not going to happen. So I don't know what line that's on. Oh no, I know why that's an error. The repeating linear gradient style is not supported by Chrome, but the WebKit version is. So you might not get that error in if you're viewing this in a different browser. That's what that is about. So on line 175, this style is being overwritten by this style because it's more specific. Okay, so that's just an example of where one style is being overwritten by another style. So if you're ever stuck, come here, find the style that you think should be taking precedence, and it will tell you which one is not letting the one you want to take precedence, and why, sort of thing. Okay, and did I just jump a style? So I've got another tried editor. So just have a play. See if you can. I think I've got some instructions here. So just have a play. Make sure you understand why certain attributes are being colored the way they are. So you've got some style sheets, styling attributes and selectors. And now, of course, the question is, where do you put them? So there are three places. So the first one, you can use a style attribute. And this is good for development, but not so good for final versions. So try not to make this a permanent thing. Try not to use inline style. Now, the other option is to, what am I saying here? Why have I got that there? Oh, I think I've got some. Yeah, I think they should actually be in this slide. I'm really sorry about this. That should be at home up here. I'll just flag that as well. I've got some jumpy content. So slide page 4, page 38, 36. Content misplace. I forgot to tell you about the platinum gold medal because it's in the wrong place. So, so when you've got important, this is like a giant override. And I think you can actually see it. I think I've got an example here. So this one was quite tricky. This one was not taking shape in Canvas. So I had to put an important because I think they actually have an important style. So I had to have an important style to overwrite their important style. So yeah, it was quite frustrating. Their pre-text is ridiculously big. I don't know why that is. So so I recommend, if it's very late, then obviously put it in. But if you highlight everything with important, you'll end up just basically highlighting nothing. So only use this in an emergency. So maybe I'm reading this slide wrong. Hang on a sec. Maybe I've just made an assumption. Did I cover embedded external inherit styles? Sorry, I'm just losing my place at the moment. I should maybe try and take a note of the time. So 38, cut out waffle. Try and look professional. So if you see a jump cut, you know what's happened here. So what am I saying? Oh yes, I know what this slide is about. So before I was covering inline, embedded, and external style sheets. If you've got exactly the same, where's the specificity calculator? Let's just say I've got the exact same styles and they're styling text different colors. Usually what happens is any inline style generally takes precedence. And it's basically got the rights of an ID attribute because it is essentially just styling one element. But when it comes to embedded style sheets and external style sheets, generally, if it's a dead heat, if it's an absolute tie, then the embedded style sheet will take priority over the external style sheet because it's seen to be a more specific style sheet. And as I said before, inherit is something which we saw in those emphasis tags. If you want something to inherit the color or the style, you just say inherit if it's not inheriting. And if it is inheriting and you don't want it to inherit, you could just say color initial, and it will go back to what it would have been had its parent not been styled. And of course, the important style. So I'm beginning to think this slide does make sense. I just got a bit muddled there. The important style is like the platinum medal at the Olympics, which takes precedence over the gold medals. And try not to use them too often. So we're now moving to the final couple of slides, which is how humans see color. So, oh, look how beautiful this rainbow is. It's so lovely. And oh, look, I can see all the colors in the rainbow. Well, guess what? That's not true. Humans can only see red, green, and indigo blue. We can't actually see orange, yellow, green, cyan, and violet. And there's another color, purple, which doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even exist on the rainbow. There is no purple. And I think there are some birds that have got more color channels than we have. But I know for a fact that insects do have at least 4. They can see into the ultraviolet. And I think some of those octopi, squid creatures, they have an incredible range. Might pull up the oatmeal. I think if you search in the oatmeal, let me just. Oh my goodness, this is such an aside. Stop going off on asides, Dropper. Signal.com. Maybe it's not oatmeal. Let me just... yeah, so what's oatmeal comic? I'm just searching off screen here. Oh, theoatmeal.com. Yeah. So I'm just looking for a particular cartoon. Offsite? Where's the search box? No. Comics. Animals. Oh, I can't find it. Okay, that's a stupid aside. Okay. Okay, somewhere on this website, theoatmeal.com, there is a squid which just says how awesome this squid is, but I can't quite find it just for the moment. I don't want to spend too much time looking for it. So anyway, humans, we're easily fooled. So if you see green and red together, we actually see yellow. And but you know, if it was a piano, you would hear the two notes, but because it's color, we actually think that the middle note is being played because we can't detect frequencies. So I've just got an example here. I've got an iPhone under a microscope. The white box represents a pixel. So it's got a red, green, and as I said, an indigo blue channel. And we can use, I've been using colors like red, named colors like red and blue and green. But there's another way of specifying colors in hexadecimal, so 12-bit color. Allows us to control each one of these channels by 16 steps. So I can have it off and then 1 out of 16, 2 out of 16. Oh, sorry. I can have it off 1 out of 15, 2 out of 15, 3 out of 15, all the way up to 15. So there's 15 steps that are not 0, and 0 is the 16th step. So given 3 channels, so 16 times 16 times 16 gives us 4,096 colors, which is not bad. This is pretty good. And I've got a little pixel color simulator. So if you just play around with these sliders, essentially this is simulating this. So this is a pixel. And when you have a whole heap of pixels together in an iPhone or, you know, other smartphone, this is your overall effect. So I'll just demonstrate yellow because yellow is pretty crazy. So you've got the green channel on full and you bring in red and suddenly your brain thinks, oh, that's yellow, even though, you know, red and green do not look like yellow. Our brains just think yellow is being played. And if you have a look, you know, if you put a little drop of water on your phone or your computer screen, you can see that it truly is the red and green channels glowing brightly. And you bring up blue, and you don't see any blue. You just see it basically getting paler, and that's pretty. I think that's a pretty cool optical illusion that insects are probably laughing at us when they see us doing this. So I've got some colors here. I'd like you to try and recreate those colors. And of course, if you do suffer from red-green color blindness or any other type of color blindness, I wouldn't mind if you come along to the chats, just tell me what you see when you play around with these two channels. You know, like, does this color and this color look the same? I wouldn't mind knowing what you see, whether it's a very subtle difference or whether, you know, the difference is more profound. And blue, of course. Okay, so that's 16-bit color. So you've got 16 16 steps if you include 0. Humans, if we break each one of those steps into 16 more steps, so we put in 16 little tiny steps in between each, basically the steps with 24-bit color, and I'm trying to represent it here. So each one of these little boxes is a different color. And if you look at each one, it's hopefully very hard to see any difference. But as you go along, you basically see that, if I was to drag this square back to there, you would see that it is definitely a lighter shade. But when you put in 16 more steps, it's very hard to see. So this is 24-bit color. So the first 2 digits is the red channels, the next 2 is the green channel, and the next 2 are the indigo blue channel. And that's pretty much gives us continuous color. Unless you're a superhuman, you won't see any steps created there. So that gives us each step is 255, or there are 256 steps, so 255 given the 0th step. And that gives us 16.7 million colors, because it's 256 times 256 times 256. Enough colors for humans not to really see any differences. Hexadecimal is not for everyone, so there's this alternative syntax RGB, and you can put in decimal numbers. But again, decimal numbers aren't for everyone. Sorry, I'll say that again. 255 is not a number that's intuitive for everyone. So you can also say, what percentage, how brightly you want that to be glowing, and each of those channels, and that will give you something there. Something more understandable, I'm guessing. Now, there is a better model, a better color model. It's the hue, saturation, lightness model. And I want to show you. Oh, man, I keep selecting that link. I've got to get rid of that one. So this is the secured area. This web page has got some examples. And what I'm doing is I'm actually coloring. If you look at the links here, this submenu is actually the same shade of green as this green, but it's just a lighter, less vibrant color. But essentially the hue or the shade of color is the same. And it's very hard getting the hues correct if you're using RGB directly. So if you want to have a good looking color scheme, you have to be really smart and try and either you're superhuman with the RGB, but if you use HSL, you can get the color to be more friendly. So the hue, basically what we do is we start with red. So red's at 0, and we go around the color wheel. So we go past 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees. So if you say HSL 120, that gives us green. Keep going. Cyan is at 180, so it's opposite red. And if we go to 270, we get to violet. So when we get to violet, we know that the shade of color is 270. So that's the paint that's coming out of the can, so to speak. The next number is how intense we want the color. So if we want it totally unpolluted by any gray, white, or black mixer paint, we say 100%. But if we want it to be, more sort of like a gray or an off-white color, off-gray color, and off-black color, we provide a low number for this. And I've got a simulator coming up, so don't stress too much. And this number is the lightness. If that number is 0, it's black. If it's 1, it's white. sorry, if it's 100%, it's white. So if you want the best color, no, not the best colors. If you want the if you want a strong color that isn't washed out or graded out, think Game of Thrones, everything's black. You would pick 50%. So that's good lighting conditions, I will say. So I've got the simulator here, and I'll just show you how the pixels work again. As I said, if you change this one and this one, nothing happens because we need to have some lightness. So if that's at 50, we get so full saturation, we get the red light is on full, and as we go around the color wheel, you can see that the strength of each channel is going from 0 to 255. So we've got the full channel range here. Now, if I back this off, say, to a low figure, what's happening here is the red channel the channels don't get above 147 and they don't go below 108. So we're getting a kind of like a grayscale color, and we're just basically clipping the range. And if I go down further, we're getting nothing. This is no difference. But I'll just pop that up. Just a slight gradient between 120 and 135. So we've got a gray that's just slightly off. So if you want an off-white, so that's full white. So you back that off a little bit so you can go through the colors. This is the intensity of each channel is fluctuating between 204 and 255. So it's a very light color. And if you want a very dark color, that's just fluctuating between 0 and 46. We get that kind of stepping through the rainbow around the color wheel, but it's a very dark color. So if you choose your hue, you can then like choose different shades, and those colors won't clash. So that's the kind of like a very handy design tip when choosing colors. Even if you're colorblind, you can sort of accidentally choose, colors that aren't too bad if you use the HSL model. And my code here is basically doing that. I'm picking the same hue, but I'm just modifying the lightness and the saturation. Another thing we can do is transparency. So we can add another channel, which is the alpha channel. And opacity and alpha mean the same thing. So if something's full alpha, it means it's not transparent. It's fully opaque. And if the alpha is 0, then the transparency is 100% and it's fully transparent. And so what we do is we just add an A. So either RGB, if you're using RGB, or HSL. And you just add this other number, and it's got to vary between 0 and 1 to say how transparent it is. And if you look here, you can see I've got some transparency here. So I've got HSLA here, so it's allowing the background to come through, but if I'm not happy with that, I can set that to 1. But if I go, actually, no, that doesn't look too good. I want that to be 0, so fully transparent. And then you might think, oh, no, that's too much. No, 0.7 was just what I needed. I just want it to be slightly interesting, but not too interesting. So I want the background to come through, but not compete with the text. And just to let you know, this is another thing that you can do with the RGB. you can actually have an A here. So if you have another number that's between 0 and F, you can say RGBA. So, you know, FFF0 will give you a fully transparent color. And likewise here, 70 EET DT, if you say 66, no, sorry, 88, you will get something that's 50% transparent. I should update that slide just to include that option. And finally, just to close off today's lecture, if you've got an image and you just want it to be a watermark in the background, you can give it an opacity of 0.05. So this is like if you don't want to use the color, you want to adjust the opacity separately, you can say what the opacity is. So in this case, 0.05, and that gives you a 95% transparent watermark. And if we return to the top, so that's the end of today's tut. This actually, I think this is actually a transparent image. So this image is transparent because the image is transparent. But do I have a glow? I think we'll be looking at a glow next week. So I'll just hold off demonstrating that fully. So I'll just scroll to the bottom. So that's just one way of getting a nice watermark image into your page. So I'll just waffle on a little bit, say, come along to the chats, bring your questions, and hopefully two more, you know, the previous lecture should appear around here and the next lecture should appear here. And I'll see you in the chats, fingers crossed.